Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Shift of Shadows. Synopsis. It's a book 2 of the Luna's journey with Snow Moon Pack. Violet and Garrett, twins to Alpha Dimitri and Luna Lily, are finally coming of age. But nobody expects what happens when they shift for the first time. A new type of wolf emerges, causing a rift in the twins' relationship. What's more, Garrett is bent on stopping his sister and her mate from being together. But a danger bigger than their problems is just over the horizon, waiting. Violet and Garrett will have to find a way to put aside their differences, and work together to save Blood Moon. After all, family is what matters most, and the bond between the two will open up a world full of possibilities. Episode 1. Violet's POV. Goddess. I love this song. I squealed with happiness. I pulled Dylan to the middle of the gigantic living room, already packed with sweaty teenagers, and starting to move my hips in time with the beat. Catching my hand, he spun me around once, before pulling me into his chest. I giggled as he tried to land a kiss, for the third time tonight. I told you, I'm saving myself for my mate. I grinned. It's just a kiss, Vi. He argued. I shook my head. I want my first to be with my mate, every first. He rolled his eyes and groaned. You torture me, woman. I took a step back, shaking my hips again. I swear, he almost drooled. We danced for a while more, every so often Dylan trying to sneak a kiss. When it started becoming more annoying than funny, I excused myself to go find the bathroom. Finding an empty one, finally, I locked the door and sat on the edge of the tub. Dylan was a nice guy, and he'd been my friend since 3rd grade, when his parents had joined the pack. I knew he'd always had a crush on me, he wasn't very subtle about it. Yet, he didn't always respect the boundaries I'd put in place about waiting for my mate. He was captain of the football team, the typical jock. His gold wavy hair and clear blue eyes, coupled with his flawless skin and fantastic physique, made him a magnet for most of the girls at school. There was a time when I'd swooned over him too. Until he'd started making out with more than a few girls, and slept with at least 4 that I knew about. And that's when I started to lose interest in him. He thought I was weird for waiting for my mate, but did I want to end up a notch on someone's bedpost? No. I knew it was silly to want my mate to be a virgin like me, guys had needs as I heard. But that didn't mean I couldn't wait. It was, after all, my body and my decision. Thinking all this through, I decided I was going to stop flirting with Dylan. Of course, it was harmless, on my end, but he was right. Obviously, I was giving him the wrong impression. With that thought in mind, I opened the door, apologizing to the girls who'd been waiting outside, and made my way to find him. I took the stairs quickly down, scanning the crowd until suddenly, my eyes landed on him. Dylan was tucked away in the corner of the living room with Sarah, the biggest hoe in school, in a heated make-out session. Her hands moved the front of his pants, grabbing him. I almost gagged. This is why I wanted to wait. 1 minute, he was all over me, and the next, he moved on to the next girl. Boys. I thought, shaking my head as I descended the rest of the stairs. Locating my jacket from the front closet, I left the house and my best friend behind. I pulled out my phone and called ISA. Heya, where you it? She yelled into the receiver. I laughed. Isabel was a few years older than me, but my best girlfriend. She knew me better than anyone, better than even Dylan. She was a witch, so unlike us wolves, alcohol affected her way more. I'm leaving. Heading home. I told her. What? Why? Just not in the party mood tonight. I checked the time quickly. Almost midnight. You'll be okay to get home though. Oh yeah. Trevor is giving me a ride later. Alright. I'll see you tomorrow. Love you. Love you, girl. Tucking my phone into my pocket, I made my way down the long driveway and onto the sidewalk. The wind was blowing nicely through the trees along the walk, my long black hair lifting in it. My eyes scanned my surroundings, an automatic reflex now. Training with my dad, alpha of the pack, had caused me and my twin brother Garrett to be cautious, even inside the pack boundaries. It's not that I didn't feel safe here at Blood Moon, but as we were taught, you never knew when rogues might attack. As I walked, my anger grew towards Dylan. Was I jealous? No. I knew it seemed that way, but honestly, I was more upset with him than jealous. I could only hope his future mate hadn't seen him shamelessly making out and being groped by another girl. His 18th birthday was in 2 days, he was going to find his mate sooner rather later, I was sure. I ducked my head as the selfish thought ran through my head that I hoped it wasn't me. Again. I know, I was horrible. He was my best guy friend, and yet I hoped he wasn't my mate. Stupid. Snap! My head whipped around at an unexpected loud noise. I eyed the area around me slowly, holding my breath. You should try looking up, princess. I groaned aloud, but looked up anyways. Perched on a low-hanging branch was Jasper, my least favorite person in the world. He shot me a sarcastic smile while I glared at him. What are you doing up there? I asked him. He shrugged. Does anyone own this tree? No. Then I guess I can be up here. I rolled my eyes. Okay, honest disclosure time, Jasper was hot. Like, hot. He had short brown hair that was thick and slightly wavy, but not as wavy as Dylan's. His eyes were a gorgeous silver grey, and his body? I'd seen him shirtless on the training grounds, he had a fully stacked six-pack, and was toned in all the right places. He was also stood over 6 feet, dwarfing my 5'7" figure. He had just the right amount of facial hair already to bring his look together into your typical bad boy. But his attitude? Ugh. Jasper had this way about him, this I don't give a FK about anything attitude that was a total turn-off. Plus, rumor had it he'd slept with more than half the school. Gross. Why you staring at me, princess? Like what you see? He grinned. I'm not staring at you. I averted my eyes quickly. And don't call me princess. Swinging his legs over, Jasper jumped from the branch, landing lightly on his feet. I craned my neck back to look up at him. All right. He stuck his hands in his pockets. What are you doing out here? Walking. Alone. I folded my arms across my chest. Yes. Is that a problem? No need to get so defensive. I was just asking. He looked over my head before looking back at me. Want some company? No, thanks. I turned and started walking again, but he fell into step beside me anyways. What was it with these boys? None of them listened to me. Jasper, I said, I'm good. We're close to the quarters. It's not safe for you to be out here alone at night. I stopped and shot him another glare. Do you not remember who my parents are? I've been well trained to handle any rogues who might attack. But thank you very much for your concern. This time he crossed his arms. Oh really? So, hypothetically, let's say that 20 or so rogues come out of the forest right now. How do you plan to handle them all by yourself? My mouth opened, ready to argue, but the words caught in my throat. I'm sure I looked very attractive, jaw opening and closing like a fish. Finally, I shot him the finger and turned away. That's what I thought, he said. I hate you, I mumbled. He laughed quietly beside me. It took 25 minutes to get back to the pack house. 25 minutes of awkward silence and annoying whistling from Jasper. When he started walking up the drive, I pulled him back sharply. He gave me a confused look. What? You can't just walk up to the front door, I hissed. Why not? You live here. I bit my lip, watching as his face went from confusion to amusement with a hint of awe. You're not supposed to be out, are you? He asked. That's not your business, I snapped. Wow. Never would have thought you would break the rules. Would you just go? How did you get out? He asked instead. For the millionth time that night, I groaned out loud. Out my window. Okay? Now will you leave? He laughed, trying to cover it with a cough. Violet. Okay. I'm gone. He patted my head, like I was a 3-year-old, and walked back the way we'd come. I took the opposite way, scurrying around the bushes lining the sidewalk and into the shadows of the front lawn. I'd done this way too many times now, and in no time at all I was at the back of the house, climbing the tree that led to my window. Slipping in carefully, I let out a breath of relief, smiling to myself. The lamp beside my bed clicked on, and the smile fell from my face. Mom sat on my bed, her face the epitome of anger. Violet's POV mom stared at me, possibly too angry to speak. Her aura was growing by the second. I was surprised I hadn't felt it coming in. I decided to break the silence. I opened my mouth to speak, but she held up her hand. I closed it and waited. Finally, she spoke, her voice like ice. Where have you been? She said each word distinctly, gritting them out between her teeth. Out. I muttered. She raised her eyebrows. Out with some friends. I clarified. Do you have any idea what time it is? Midnight. I guessed. It had been close to then when I checked last. Midnight. And you were out. With friends. She blinked for the first time. And drinking. There was no point in lying. A little. And what? And what else? And nothing else. Violet. She looked away, her eyes scanning over the walls of my room. Don't lie to me. I'm not. What else do you think I was doing, Mom? You were out with Dylan. Yes. I admitted. She gave me that look, the same look she gave me every time Dylan was around. I caught on to what she was implying and cringed. Goddess Mom, I didn't do anything with Dylan. I didn't do anything with anybody. You snuck out, again, you were drinking, and you were with a boy. What am I supposed to think? I was with friends, not just Dylan. You have to stop assuming him and I are a thing. Where were you, exactly? She asked. I was out. Smooth. Yes, but where? I sighed. I went to a party, okay. I crossed the room and flopped onto my beanie bag chair. She stared at me. Whose party? Someone from school, Mom. Drop the attitude, Violet. She stood up, pacing in front of me. Do you have any idea how worried I was? You're lucky I didn't wake your dad. He would have sent people out to find you. I shuddered, because I knew she was right. This has to stop. She continued. We can't keep doing this. We set certain rules for you to follow, and you just can't seem to follow them. Why? Why is it so important to disobey us? To make us worry about you. I wasn't trying to worry you. I just wanted to have some fun. I said. You'll be 18 in 2 weeks. It's time to start acting like an adult, Violet. My anger was burning. I threw her an icy glare. Maybe if you didn't keep me locked up in here, I wouldn't feel the need to sneak out. She met my tone. I don't keep you locked up. You can go anywhere you want. I scoffed loudly. Right. As long as I tell you 3 days in advance, give you everyone's contact information, a GPS location, and take one of Aunt Clara's stupid locator pendants. You want me to act like an adult, yet you treat me like a child. I practically yelled. There are things out there that are worse than rogues, Violet. I make you carry those pendants so we can always find you. Why not just lock me in the dungeon, Mom? At least I can't climb out the window there. Ugh. She sat heavily on the bed, her head in her hands. A wave of guilt washed through me. I knew I wasn't an easy child, I never had been. At the same time, I felt like I had a valid point. Growing up, Mom and Dad would occasionally leave the pack for business, leaving us in the care of our grandparents. My friends talked endlessly about trips they'd taken, places they'd been. Me? To this day, I'd never been outside the pack. Not even to Uncle Killian's pack, which was practically merged with ours. What stung more was Garrett had. Because he was taking over as Alpha someday, he had to learn the ins and outs of the job and title. But I couldn't go to one freaking party? How was that fair? As if he'd heard my thoughts, my door opened and my brother poked his head in, looking between Mom and myself. What's going on? He asked. None of your business. I snapped. His mouth pressed into a thin line at my tone. He took in my clothes and my shoes and our mother still on my bed. You snuck out again, didn't you? Again, not your business. Why do you have to be so nosy? I threw back. Enough. Mom's aura washed over us, effectively shutting us up. Garrett, don't call your sister names. Violet, she raised her head to look at me, is there even a point in grounding you? I shrugged, not answering. Mom sighed. Fine. I'll talk to your dad in the morning about this. Great. I replied sarcastically. Shaking her head, she ushered my brother out the door and left. I kicked off my shoes and checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Dylan, and 8 texts. I scrolled through them quickly, not really reading them before shutting it off. I wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone now. I stood up and stripped out of my clothes before going to my bathroom and turning on the shower. I washed quickly, removing what little makeup I had on and trying to release some of the tension in my body. After stepping out and drying, I threw on whatever pajamas my hands touched in my dresser and crawled into bed, turning off the light. I woke up to the sound of someone knocking on my door. I rolled over lazily, calling that it was open. When my dad walked in, I simply lay in bed and stared at him. Have you come to haul me away for my punishment? I asked. Breakfast and ready. And he shut the door. I got up and made my way to the bathroom. Apparently, this morning wasn't going to be any better than last night. After I was presentable, I joined my family in the dining room. The room was converted from a bedroom on our floor, because Mom wanted a place to have family dinners other than in the cafeteria. I took my seat at the table and started to fill my plate with bacon, eggs, pancakes and hash browns. Garrett eyed me over the table, but I ignored him. Mom was sitting in her chair, sipping her morning coffee while Dad turned off the stove. I forked a piece of pancake into my mouth as he sat down. Mom put down her cup and Garrett leaned back in his chair. Everyone stared at me. "Just get it over with," I said around another bite. "You know you're in trouble," Dad said. "Obviously," I retorted. "But we're not grounding you." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. I looked between the three of them. "Last night I asked you why you refused to follow the rules we've set down for you. I want an answer," Mom said. I looked at her, and told her the truth. "Because it's not fair." "What isn't fair?" Dad asked. I set down my fork. "You guys don't let me have a life. Garrett can do anything he wants, and you never say anything. I can't even hang out with my friends without a list of requirements beforehand. You let him leave the pack, but somehow it's too dangerous for me. I feel like you guys don't trust me. You want me to be an adult, but you don't let me experience what adulthood is like." I shrugged. "It's just easier to do things my way, and faces the consequences later." Mom and Dad looked at each other, their eyes glazing over as they mind-linked. Garrett was looking at his plate, his brow furrowed. His red hair was messy from sleep. Even though we were twins, we honestly weren't that much alike. Our looks, obviously, but our attitudes as well. Garrett was adamant on following the rules. He always had been. He avoided trouble where he could, rarely ever getting into fights, and he studied hard at school. He was also introverted, preferring to keep to himself. I had no doubt he would make a great alpha someday. Not that I didn't try. I did well in school. I enjoyed a good book too. But unlike Garrett, who was content to stay in Blood Moon, I wanted to see everything I could. I had a wild side, an adventurous side. I was opinionated, probably a little too much at times. I didn't mind trouble, and didn't go out of my way to find it, but I'd been suspended from school a few times for starting fights. For good reasons, I thought, like when Sarah was bullying a girl in my math class. Mom had laid into me, but I wasn't sorry. Still, it seemed I just didn't match up to my family's expectations. Eventually, I stopped trying. Dad cleared his throat, bringing me back to the conversation. "We think you make a valid point, Violet," he said. I raised my eyebrows. "So here's what's going to happen. We're not grounding you," Mom said. "We're going to try a compromise." "What kind of compromise?" I asked. "You don't need to tell us where you're going, or who you're with, as long as it's within pack borders. Also, you still need to take Aunt Clara's pendant with you wherever you go. And you need to be home by 11 if you go out. What if I want to leave the pack? Then you need to take 2 warriors with you, and we will need to know where you're going and who you're with," Dad said. "I think that's fair." I agreed. Mom exhaled and Dad gave me a small smile. "And," Mom said. I looked at her nervously. "We're sorry you've been feeling this way. From now on, let's just talk, okay?" "Okay." I gave her a hesitant smile, which she returned. Dylan's POV. Violet hadn't replied to any of my messages. Was she really that annoyed at me? It wasn't entirely my fault. I wasn't expecting Sarah to pounce on me the way she did. Still, I had to admit she knew what she was doing. But I didn't think it called for Violet ditching me. I pulled up to school, parking in my usual spot, and grabbed my bag from the passenger seat. I threw on my sunglasses, and locked the car. As usual, there was a group of girls waiting inside the doors to swarm me. I smiled politely, pushing through. I needed to talk to Vi. I took the halls until I found her at her locker, gathering her books for the day. She glanced at me as I approached, but didn't acknowledge me in any other way. "Hey," I said. "Hey." I leaned against the metal, looking down at her face. "So, I missed you last night." "Really? You seemed to be enjoying yourself from what I remember." She closed her locker and turned to me. "Come on, Vi." "I didn't mean to." She raised one eyebrow at me. "Seriously? What, did you slip and fall into her vagina?" "She initiated it." "Okay. Good for her." I caught her hand. "Don't be mad, please. It won't happen again." Violet shook her head. "I'm not mad, Dylan. At least, not for the reason you think I am." "Then why are you?" "Dylan, almost everyone in our grade was at that party. Your birthday is tomorrow. Your future mate could have seen what you were doing. It was so tasteless." She shook her head. "Not this again. Not everyone waits for their mate, Vi. I know. But most people have enough class not to parade it in front of everyone. I know if I turned out to be your mate, I'd be pretty upset." She patted me on the shoulder before turning and walking away. "She's not wrong, you know." Garrett appeared beside me, looking after his sister. "You think?" He nodded. "Violet can be a handful. But in this case, I have to agree with her." A wave of shame engulfed me. I thought about all the girls I'd seen last night, making out with different guys. What if any of them turned out to be mate? Looking at from that perspective, I had to admit, I didn't like the feeling. I gazed after Violet's retreating form. I was so sure she was my mate. I'd been looking forward to it since I met her. Would she really be disgusted by me? Would she even accept me? Garrett and I walked to class together, him telling me about how Vi got caught last night, and what happened this morning. About time too. I told Dad ages ago to ease up on her. He said as we sat down. "I hate that she views me as being against her." He frowned. "Ah, dude, she knows you love her. You're her brother." "Yeah, I know." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Jasper Cole walk in. Jasper, attending class? That had to be a first. I saw Garrett give me a look, saying he was thinking the same thing. Almost as soon as he sat down, every girl in the class started eyeing him, giggling and trying to get his attention. Goddess, what was with them? The guy was ADE. Yeah, he was okay looking, but his attitude sucked. I watched as a brunette leaned across the aisle, flipping her hair. Jasper barely looked in her direction, and eventually she sat back, disappointed. "If you catch more flies with honey than vinegar, does that make Jasper the honey?" Garrett whispered to me. "Nah." I whispered back. "You catch more flies with than anything." "This isn't deaf," Jasper said loudly. He turned in his seat, eyeing the both of us. "You got a problem?" "Nope," I replied. "Just wondering why every girl falls for one like you." He smirked. "Maybe they know what I can give them." "What you've got isn't much to brag about," Garrett said. Jasper turned to him. "Your sister seems to think otherwise." I tried to stop him, truly. My hand grazed Garrett's arm as he flew past me and hauled Jasper out of his seat and pinned him against the wall. "What did you say?" he growled. "Oh, you didn't know I was with your sister last night." Despite his situation, he looked less than concerned. "What did you do with her?" Jasper peeled Garrett's fingers off his collar, giving him a shove back. "Chill, dude. I only walked her home. No good night kiss or anything." My anger rose as he smirked at me. Everyone knew how I felt about Violet, it was no big secret. "Stay away from my sister," Garrett snapped. Jasper simply widened his smirk. The teacher then graced us with her presence, and Garrett returned to his seat angrily. The entire class, he eyed the back of Jasper's head murderously. I noticed a couple girls passing notes back and forth behind the teacher's back. A few of the girls who'd already shifted were mind-linking. When the bell rang, Garrett stalked out the door. I'd only seen him so angry a couple times before, and always, it was about Violet. He really was protective over her. By lunchtime, he'd calmed down some, mostly I thought because he hadn't run into Jasper again. "You want to come over tonight, play some Halo or something?" he asked me. We were standing in line, waiting to get our food. "Sure. I just got a new game, it's awesome." "Sounds cool. You okay?" "You seem kind of." Garrett's words were cut off by a loud gasp. Actually, it was more than one. I think everyone in the cafeteria gasped simultaneously, creating one audible effect. My head turned in the direction of everyone else around me, almost as if I didn't have a choice. What I saw confused the out of me. Violet stood in the middle of the room, her chest heaving up and down, her face red, and an expression of pure fury I'd only ever seen on her mother's face. In front of her, holding his right cheek, was Jasper. To my surprise, he was looking at the floor rather than at her. Had she slapped him? "Why?" As if on cue, she answered my question, speaking to Jasper. "How dare you start such a vile rumor about me? I should kick you right here." She seethed. "Rumor? What are you talking about?" Jasper asked. Everyone leaned in, intent on the drama unfolding in front of us. "You told my brother I slept with you," she raged. Jasper's eyes went wide. "No, I didn't." "Garrett." Vi looked around until she spotted us. "Did he, or did he not, tell you this morning that something happened last night between us?" I looked at my friend, along with everyone else. "I made a joke about his size, and he said that's not what your sister said last night or something," and before he finished, Violet slapped Jasper again. "Hard. Would you stop doing that?" "It was just a joke, I told him I was joking." Jasper grumbled. "Well, clearly someone didn't think it was a joke. Tell them, right now, Jasper. Tell everyone, or I swear nothing happened. I walked you home, end of story." He looked around the cafeteria. "Who's been saying otherwise?" A group of girls to my left ducked their heads. I eyed them, and Violet noticed. She stalked over to their table, slamming her hands down. "Which one of you?" They sat silently. "Which one?" "I'm sorry." A small brunette spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "I recognized her from our class this morning. I didn't mean to. It's just, with his reputation you thought I'd fall onto his DK like every other girl at this school." Violet finished for her. The girl just stared at her. "Keep my name out of your mouth from now on. Got it?" She nodded vigorously, reminding me of the bobblehead I had in my car. Angrily, Vi swiped the girl's lunch tray onto the floor. It landed with a loud clang, food scattering. Then she looked at Garrett. "And you too." With that, she stormed off, throwing the doors open and leaving. There was a collective release of breaths, the loudest from the brunette. Everyone started whispering, but I ignored it, turning back to Garrett. He looked perplexed, a mix of guilt and annoyance on his face. "You want me to talk to her?" I asked him. "No. Let her cool off." "All right." We got our food and sat down at a nearby table. Garrett ate silently, lost in his own thoughts. I looked around at the few teachers in the room, totally unsurprised they hadn't intervened. Everyone was more or less used to Violet's outbursts. They only got involved now if it became physical. I looked down at my tray, picking at the mashed potatoes. I should have paid more attention this morning. Who knew those girls would take Jasper's words seriously? Even with his reputation? Violet was proud, beyond proud, that she had waited this long for her mate. It was something her parents had instilled in them both. Your mate was the greatest gift from the goddess, your true other half. Growing up, and learning about what her mother went through before she found our Alpha, I think that's what made Violet's resolve so strong. To her, her parents were her role models. They were iconic leaders, and the pack had never been better for it. My eyes wandered up and landed on Jasper. He was sitting alone, his cheek stained red. His eyes were focused on the doors, the ones Violet had left through. His face was thoughtful. A tiny smile graced his lips and a feeling of uneasy anger coursed through me. Just what was he playing at? Dylan's POV. I stayed at the pack house that night, wanting to be near Violet when I turned 18. Garrett glanced at me every so often, probably wondering why I was so agitated. My leg was bouncing up and down like crazy and my hands were slightly shaking. I was both nervous and excited. At 11:15, Garrett was passed out sideways on his bed, the controller hanging limply in his hand. I took it and placed it on the floor, checking the time. Again. What would it feel like? Mom and Dad told me there was nothing else like it, nothing in the world, to see your mate for the first time. I'll admit it, I was already in love with Violet. I had been for as long as I could remember. Would it feel more powerful than that, more powerful than the love I already carried for her? I was eager to find out. The problem was, would she accept me? I replayed her words over and over in my head from school. No, she will feel it too. The bond will help bring us together, help us move past my indiscretions. I don't know how long I sat on the floor, staring into space and thinking about the girl down the hall, but when I checked the time again, it was 5 minutes to 12. I jumped up, clutching my phone in my hand. I stared at it unblinkingly, watching the minutes tick down. 4 minutes. 3. 2. 1. I held my breath, waiting. When it hit midnight, my head swung around to the door. My heart started beating faster with anticipation, my hands felt clammy. I glanced back at my phone. 12:03. Hey? Hello Dylan. Whoa. I jumped 2 feet and looked around wildly. Laughter sounded, and it took me a stupid amount of time to figure out it was coming from in my head. It was my wolf. Hey! You're my wolf, right? I thought to him. The one and only. Nice to finally meet you. What's your name? Unny. Unny? That's odd. I did not choose my name, but I am proud to bear it. Oh. Well, it's nice to have you around. Finally. Hey, I have a question. What's that? Why can't I feel the bond yet with Violet? Have you considered the possibility that Violet is not our mate? No, that couldn't be right. Vi and I were perfect for each other. I looked at the door again, half expecting her to walk through. My eyes widened as I realized my mistake. I had to see her. Quietly crossing the room, I slipped out the door and headed to Violet's. She was only 3 doors down. My heart picked up with every step again, and Annie was quiet in my head, waiting. I stood outside her door, my hand poised to knock. But something inside me held me back. Why couldn't I feel anything? I was close enough, for sure. Shouldn't I be able to scent her? According to my mom, your mate's scent was the most attractive thing in the world to you. But all I could smell was the same scents I'd always associated with Violet. Her favorite laundry detergent, a faint whiff of those incenses she liked to burn, and the pizza we had earlier. Pepperoni and bacon, and extra cheese. These scents did not overwhelm me though, didn't make me want to break down the door and take her in my arms. I lowered my hand, suddenly unsure. As it swung down by my hip, the door opened. Hey! I've been waiting for you. Violet stood in front of me, wearing blue silk pajama shorts and a matching top. Her hair was let loose, mussed from lying in bed. Her face was passive, but nervous. She bit her lip, the little action that I loved so much. I looked into her unique, one-of-a-kind blue-green eyes and I felt nothing. Nothing like what was described to me. The disappointment that followed was crushing. Violet wasn't my mate. I reached out and caught the doorham to steady myself. I had been so sure. I'm sorry, Dylan. Vi reached out and patted my shoulder. The absence of sparks was another blow. It just wasn't meant to be for us, I guess. But you do have a mate out there. I wanted it to be you. I said lowly. I know. She took a breath through her nose. But that's not what the goddess wants. She has someone else in mind for you. I didn't know what to say. Vi smiled at me kindly. Did you meet your wolf? She asked. I nodded. What's his name? Annie. I can't wait to see what he looks like. She smiled again, her eyes wandering around the hall. Well, I should go to bed. I'm sorry, again. Maybe you'll meet your mate tomorrow, at school. Yeah, maybe. I mumbled. Night. Night. She closed the door and I dejectedly walked back to Garrett's room. To my dismay, he was awake when I entered. So? He asked. I shook my head. It's not her. His face mirrored my feelings. Sorry, man. Thanks. He rearranged his pillow. But once you meet your true mate, you won't feel like this over my sister anymore. Yet. It would have been cool though. Having you as a brother-in-law. I gave a half chuckle. I'm still your brother, man. Garrett grinned at me as he lay back down. I know. Get some sleep, we have school. K. I pulled out his daybed, not bothering to grab blankets or a pillow. Annie talked to me until I fell asleep. It was nice, having someone to talk to privately. And he had a wicked sense of humor too. I guess it wasn't all bad, I got an awesome wolf. Before I knew it, Garrett was shaking me awake, ordering me to get moving. I rubbed my eyes and groaned. Come on, Dylan. We both slept in, and we're going to be late. He was rushing around the room like a chicken with its head cut off. I briefly noticed he'd put on 2 different socks, and one side of his shirt was tucked in while the other hung loose. I shook my head. Dylan. I'm up, relax. Swinging my legs over the edge, I stood up, stretching. That wasn't the bed I'd hoped to stay in last night. The thought made me remember, and with that came back my gloomy mood. I dressed quickly, borrowing some of Garrett's clothes. I let him pull me downstairs to the kitchens where he rushed through a bowl of cereal and I grabbed an apple. On our way out the door, we ran into Luna Lily. She looked at me expectantly, but she must have guessed rather quickly from my face because she placed her hand on my shoulder and gave me a sympathetic smile. Have a good day at school. I hope you find her. And she walked away. We have a great Luna. Annie thought. Yeah, she's pretty amazing. It felt like everyone was in attendance to witness my bad mood. We ran into Celia, one of the girls who worked in the pack house, who hugged me and told me not to worry about it. We ran into Isa in the driveway, who had already finished school a couple years before. She kindly reminded me that if I didn't meet my mate, she was currently back on the market. That had me blushing and stuttering, while Garrett laughed behind me. Awkwardly I thanked her, and got in the car. Thank goddess Aunt Clara wasn't around to hear that. Garrett yammered on the whole way to school. I didn't hear most of it honestly. I was still trying to figure out why the goddess would bless me with someone like Violet, only to make her someone else's. Her face appeared in my mind, and I spent the rest of the drive thinking about the girl who would never be mine. Can I ask you something? I interrupted Garrett. Sure. Would I even know? Doesn't Violet have to be 18 too? He sighed as he parked the car. Hey! When did we get to school? You know that's not how it works, Dylan. He side-eyed me. She wouldn't feel as strong until she was 18, but she would know. He grabbed his backpack from the back seat. So you guys aren't mates. You can still be best friends. What if that's not enough? What if I don't meet my mate? Your parents are prime examples. Your dad didn't meet your mom when he was 18. Our pack has grown a lot since then. He placed his hand on my shoulder. I know how badly you wanted it to be Violet. But you have to let it go. She's going to end up with someone else, and so are you. Maybe not right now, but someday. That's just the way it is, Dylan. He's right. We cannot pine over someone who is not ours. I love her though. I can see that. But the love you will have for our mate will be stronger. I got out of the car, the wind blowing across my face. With it came an impossibly strong scent, one that nearly brought me to my knees. Pineapples, strawberries, and a hint of lavender. Immediately, my feet starting working while my nose tracked the smell. Garrett rushed to keep up with me, asking what was happening. Annie was going absolutely insane in my head. The scent became stronger, and now I was running. Dylan. I left Garrett behind in my pursuit. Everything in me was trained on this one scent, and my mission to find the source. Part of me, a huge part, hoped desperately that the goddess had given me another chance. That the impossibly delicious smell was Violet's after all. Her face played in my mind as I ran. I turned left, right, left again. Skidding around the corner of the building, I halted as my eyes found what my soul was searching for. Mate. I breathed. Violet's POV. I felt awful. Terrible. I could not get Dylan's face out of my head. His expression when he realized I wasn't his mate? Heartbreaking. All those times I'd secretly wished I wasn't. Last night had to be the first time I wished I had been. Yet, I was still relieved. Dylan and I were meant to be friends, best friends. But nothing more. And I was okay with that. It just really sucked that he obviously wasn't. I'd gotten up early, earlier than even Garrett, so as to avoid him. I'm sure I was the last person he needed to see right now. The last thing I wanted was to hurt him more. And it was clear as day that he was hurt. I'd stayed awake, lying in bed and nervously twisting the blankets, anxiously watching the clock on my bedside table. When the clock struck midnight, I half expected Dylan to come bursting through the door, and that would be it. But he didn't. As the minutes clicked by, and I realized that nothing in me had changed, I felt both relieved and sad. And then he had come to my door, and what was I supposed to say? Better luck next time? Even if I didn't return his feelings, Dylan deserved happiness, and that's all I wanted for him. What do you think, Vi? I looked up at Brienne. I hadn't heard a word she said. We were skipping first period, because neither of us wanted to do math today. Brienne and I had been friends since the start of high school. Remember that girl I'd stuck up for from Sarah? Yup, that's Brienne. She'd been so grateful, and we'd been buddies ever since. She was a cutie, with her medium-length golden blonde hair and freckles. She had a slender build, but with just the right amount of curves. Brienne was actually the niece of my Aunt Hazel, though I hadn't known that when I'd punched Sarah. Interestingly, she'd gotten the hazel eyes as well, complementing her appearance. What's with you today? She cracked open a bag of Doritos, offering them to me. I took a handful and popped one into my mouth. It's nothing. What were you saying? I asked if you wanted to come to the party this weekend. The party? Yeah, Jasper's birthday party. He's turning 18. My face clouded with anger at his name. Okay, so maybe the rumor wasn't his fault, not entirely, but did he really need to bring me into his spat with my brother? No, he didn't. So, yes, I partially blamed him. People at this school like to gossip, he should have left me out of it completely. Yeah, I'm good. I think I'd rather have a movie weekend. I said. Ah. That means I have to go alone. Brienne pouted. Sorry chick. Didn't you just get freedom? What better way to spend it than going to a party with your friend? One you don't have to sneak out for. She argued. She had a point. Plus, you know Isa is going to get wasted again. And that's always fun. She giggled. Fun, until it's your bathroom she's puking in the next day. I replied. True. So, our conversation was interrupted by a figure rounding the corner. I jumped to my feet, which was the dumbest thing I could have done. The teachers knew our hiding spots though, if we were caught, we were caught. No sense in hiding. My insides clenched a little when I realized it wasn't a teacher though, it was Dylan. Oh, goddess! Why was he here? I really didn't want to put him down again. Mate. That one word coming from his mouth stopped my heart. It only started breathing again when I realized he wasn't looking at me. But that meant. I looked between him and Brienne. Her eyes were glued to Dylan's, both of them unmoving. Just staring at each other in awe. Gently, I gave her a little nudge forward, that's all it took. The next second, they were in each other's arms, trapped in a passionate kiss. I smiled hugely, beyond happy for my two friends. You smell like pineapples, but you taste like Doritos. Dylan told her. I laughed out loud as she blushed. He looked at me, all traces of sadness gone. We grinned at each other and I gave him a thumbs up. Looks like you have a partner for that party after all. I said. Looks like I do. Of course, that happened to be the moment Mrs. Harris came around the corner, placing her hands on her hips. I smirked in her direction. Really, girls? Again? And now you're dragging boys into your skipping. She shook her head. Mrs. Harris, these two just found out they're mates. Maybe give them the moment to bask in it a little. I said. She looked between the two, her eyes growing. Oh! Congratulations! She sauntered off awkwardly back the way she came. I walked up to my friends, throwing my arms around them in a group hug. I'm happy for you guys. I looked at Dylan. I told you so. Yet. He brushed Brienne's hair back with his free hand. I'll leave you two alone. Have fun. I gave them one more squeeze and let go. Just not too much fun. You're still at school. Vi. Brienne hissed. Her cheeks were redder than a tomato. See. I walked away as Dylan pulled her in for another kiss. Walking around the corner, I almost ran into Garrett. Did he find her? He asked. Yup. Brienne. Yup. He grinned. Didn't see that one coming. Me either. We walked side by side back to the parking lot. Hey. Garrett turned to me. I'm sorry about yesterday. About, you know. I get why you were annoyed. I shrugged. Thanks. So. Our birthday is coming up. No. She gave me a look. Are you excited? I guess. You. Yet. I can't wait to find my mate. He looked back in the direction we left Dylan and Brienne. I hope I get as lucky. You will. He looked at me, our eyes meeting. Okay, so maybe I don't say this a lot. But you're a great guy, and I'm sure the girl who is my future sister-in-law is going to be just as great. Garrett gave me his special smile, the one reserved for the people he loved best. I hadn't seen it in a long time, not directed towards me anyway. Thanks, Vi. He punched my arm lightly. Just don't you bring home. He laughed. No promises. I grinned. We went our separate ways then, him to the little time of class he had left, and me to my locker. Skipping more than one class was sure to get me an earful from my parents, if I wasn't in trouble already. I spun the lock and it popped open. English, science, history, I grabbed everything I would need for the rest of the day. Suddenly, a shadow loomed over me. I glanced up to see Jasper smiling down at me. Ugh! Hey, short stuff! He leaned against the metal next to me. Really? What happened to Princess? I asked casually. He shrugged. You said you didn't like it. So you went with short stuff instead. I rolled my eyes. Just trying out nicknames. You don't like that one either. I shook my head. I'll keep trying. His voice held a hint of a promise. Don't bother Jasper. Why not? Why would you, I think is the better question. I shut my locker and looked up at him. Goddess, his eyes really were amazing. You coming to my birthday party this weekend? He changed the subject. I narrowed my eyes at him. No. His face clouded in disappointment. Though he could have been faking. Why? We're not friends, Jasper. Truth be told, you kind of disgust me. His hand flew to his heart as mock hurt. Ouch. That's cold. I shrugged. I wasn't going to take it back. You don't have to be someone's friend to come to their party. He continued. Actually, I think it's sort of a requirement. I started walking down the hall, and he fell into step beside me. Around us, other students stopped and stared. Why do you want me there anyway? I asked quietly. I waited, but he didn't answer. Well. I peeked up at him through my lashes, my stomach flipping a little at the look he was giving me. I'd seen him give that look to many girls before. Did he think his charm was going to work on me? Not likely. Yes. He was gorgeous, but I wasn't like the other girls here. I had respect for myself. As if he could read my mind, he repeated my thoughts aloud. You're not other girls. You respect yourself, and you're the only one not throwing herself at me any chance she gets. I glanced at a group of seniors nearby. At Jasper's words, they looked away, but not before giving me icy glares. Thanks. But I have other plans. I said to him. All right. Well, if those plans change, here's my address. He slid a piece of paper into my hand, his skin was hot on mine, and my throat went dry at the touch. He gave me a dazzling smile, turned around and walked away. I stared after him for a second, trying to process. Just what did Jasper Cole want with me? Garrett's POV. It was a day. Dylan found his mate, I made basketball captain, and once again, my sister was the talk of the school. I'd been in the showers after gym class, minding my own, when I'd overheard the news. You think he likes her? Jaden's voice echoed in the room. Nah. Not for real anyway. Everyone knows Jasper only likes girls for one thing. Eric replied. I don't know, man. Samantha said he was getting pretty cozy with her. Cozy? Yeah, he was smiling at her. She said he never smiles like that. Hey. Maybe they're mates. Pfft. Jaden laughed. Jasper and Violet? No way. Everyone knows how the purity queen is. She'd reject him in a second. He's been with half the school. Yeah, but half the school have been with other guys. Violet's a virgin. There was silence for a minute. A hot virgin. I'd do her. Same. Those tits. I'd ended my shower before they went any further. Their faces went pale as soon as they saw me, both muttering apologies. I got out of there after that. Now, sadly, I had nothing better to do than think as I drove home. Vi opted to go to Brienne's after school to get the details on her and Dylan. And Dylan himself went with them, unwilling to be away from his newfound mate. It was amazing, I thought, that only this morning he was heartbroken over my sister, and now he had eyes for nobody else but Brienne. Typical Dylan, always the drama king. I frowned as I thought. Of course I was happy for Dylan, he was my best guy friend. But truthfully, I'd been hoping Vi was his mate. Goddess knows who the guy is that's her other half. Maybe they're mates. Eric's voice ran through my head again and my hands tightened on the steering wheel. Jasper couldn't be her mate, could he? I knew him, too well. He was a self-centered, selfish, who didn't care about other people's feelings. Jasper Cole was the reason I, like my sister, was also waiting for my mate. Although I wasn't as pure as she was. My heart clenched in my chest as the memories, never from far the front of my mind, came flooding in. I'd had exactly one girlfriend my whole life. Sophia Chong. The love of my life, we met at the beginning of high school. She was so beautiful, with her long blonde hair, kind brown eyes and a smile that lit up the whole room. When she talked, you just had to stop and listen. When she laughed, it was like a symphony of bells. Sophia was incredibly smart too. When I hadn't been doing so well in science, she was the one to step up and offer to tutor me. A couple of sessions at her house, and the sweetest first kiss under the apple tree in her backyard, and we were a couple. I thought she was super sweet, not wanting to broadcast our relationship to the public. She'd told me she didn't want to be seen as the girl who was dating me only because of my future title. And I'd been happy to oblige her. It was a reasonable request, after all. We'd spent the next 8 months going for walks in the forest, swimming in the lake, going to the beach, having precious intimate moments under the stars. Sophia wanted to wait for her mate, though I never doubted it was me. We were perfect for each other, perfectly connected on every level. Our love of books, our shared passion for art. And she was always there to support me, to lift me up in my moments of doubt about my future. She made me believe I could become the alpha my dad wanted me to be. And then, like waking up from a nightmare disguised as a dream, everything was gone. In the span of one night, one party, my life and my heart were shattered. I turned the car carefully around the corner, lost in the wave of memories. The music blaring. The lights dimmed. Classmates and friends laughing and drinking and having fun. Somewhere in the chaos, I'd lost Sophia. It had been a while, hadn't it? Excusing myself from our friends, I'd gone to look for her. Room after room I searched. Checked all the bathrooms. I even checked outside. The one place I hadn't thought I'd find her though, was in the farthest room of the house. In bed. Naked. With Jasper Cole. I clutched the steering wheel tighter still as my heart shattered all over again. Tears brimmed my eyes and I fought to keep them back. The last thing I needed was to hit a tree or something. But the sounds playing in my head, the sounds my Sophia was making under another man, it might as well have been happening beside me, it was so clear. She was getting pleasure from someone else. She was giving herself to someone who wasn't me. She was betraying everything we had. And she was enjoying it. Her face played in my mind the second she realized I'd entered the room. Shock, embarrassment, sadness. I'd been frozen in place as she pushed Jasper off, stuttering over her words trying to give me excuse after excuse for this tragedy. Finally, she'd simply lowered her head, tears streaming down her face, and whispered "I'm sorry." Those words brought me to the reality of the situation. Jasper had left already, which was for the best. In those 2 minutes standing like a statue, I'd come up with approximately 100 different ways to murder him. It's over. I'd choked those words out, my heart impossibly breaking more, and ran. Sophia followed, or tried to. I was out of the house and in my car probably before she was dressed again. I'd sped home, running lights and stop signs. And immediately went to my sister's room. One look at my face, and Violet had understood. That night we curled up in her bed, huddled together, just like when we were kids. If one of us had a bad dream, we would simply crawl in with the other, comforted by our twins' presence. Mom and Dad used to give us St. after a certain age, but they didn't understand. I had a familial connection with Violet that exceeded even Dad's connection with Aunt Thera. Violet had been with me since conception, she understood me better than anyone. We shared a womb, then a crib, then a room before we got our own. But the knowledge that she was always there if I needed her, just a couple doors down, made it easier. I'd told her everything. Between breaking down multiple times, I'd managed to sob out the whole story. Everything except who Sophia cheated on me with. At the time, I couldn't bear to say his name. I thought I'd lose whatever control I had left. Vi had listened, soothing me, reassuring me, letting me cry my heart out. I spent the week sleeping on Vi's floor, waking her up more often than needed with my tears. And each time, she would sit beside me, and listen, get me water if I needed it, or simply rub my back as I sobbed. Only once did she ask who the other guy was, but I never told her. Now I wish I had. As I pulled into the park house, and parked beside my mom's green Mustang, I thought maybe I should. It had been almost a year since my breakup with Sophia. I avoided her like the plague at school. But I couldn't stand it if my sister's mate turned out to be Jasper. If Violet knew it was him, she would reject him on sight. In the back of my mind, a little voice was calling me selfish. I paused with my hand on the door. No, this was different. Jasper was the reason for my despair. But is he even her mate? I groaned. My conscience just wouldn't shut up. Irritated, I opened the door, slamming it shut behind me. Swinging the keys around my finger as I walked, I tried to really think it through. Was it worth starting up so much drama right now? Hello, Garrett. Looking up, I met Gamma Luke's eyes. I considered him my uncle, along with Ben, even though we weren't related by blood. His mate, Miguel, was standing beside him, smiling politely at me. I nodded at them. Hey! What are you doing here? Had some business to go through with you, Dad. He held up a stack of papers. I'm telling you, Garrett, I can't wait until you take over. I can finally retire. He sighed happily. Beside him, Miguel laughed. And what will you do in retirement? Admit it, you would be bored to death. You know me too well. Luke grumbled. I laughed with Miguel. Maybe I'll keep you on as my assistant or something. And give you plenty of paperwork to do. I joked. Ugh. No, I'd rather be bored to death, thanks. I'll keep the offer open, in case you changed your mind. I slapped his shoulder as I passed. Oh, your dad is looking for you. He's in his office. Luke called after me. Thanks. Starting up the stairs, and wondering for the billionth time why Dad didn't put in an elevator, I tried to clear my mind of my own problems. It wasn't easy, reliving my worst memories only minutes ago. Mom and Dad still knew nothing about my relationship with Sophia, or how it ended. Not that I didn't trust them, but my humiliation wasn't something I wanted everyone to know. Violet, I knew, would never tell anyone. And, there was something about my parents, the Alpha and Luna no less, knowing I'd been played for a fool that left my guts twisting in knots. As future Alpha, I should have known better. Reaching our floor, I admired the art on the walls as always as I walked to my dad's office. Over the years, I'd helped him acquire new pieces from various artists that were now scattered around the pack house. My particular favorite was an abstract piece hanging in the foyer, of bright yellows, blues, and reds smeared across the canvas in utter pandemonium. There was no rhyme or reason to the streaks of color, leaving one's imagination open to run free. I knocked on the door, 3 quick raps. Come in. I pushed open the door and met my dad's tired eyes. His short black hair was messy, probably from him running his hands through it. Hey Dad. Garrett. Come sit. He gestured to one of the vacant chairs. I sat casually, setting my backpack down beside me. Luke said you wanted to see me. Dad leaned back in his chair, resting his hands on his desk. Yes. I wanted to talk to you about your birthday coming up. All right. He met my eyes. You'll be 18. No? You remember how old I am? I feigned surprise. The corner of his mouth twitched in a smile. Don't be a smartass. I chuckled in response. Go on. With your birthday so close, I think it's time we talk about mates. Your future mate, specifically. Garrett's POV. All right. Folding his hands together, Dad took a minute to think. I waited patiently, not sure where he was going with this. I thought we'd already had this talk. It was coupled with the incredibly awkward talk Vi and I had received a few years back. I hoped beyond hope that he remembered we'd had that talk, because I wasn't up for another round. It was bad enough the first time. You know that your mom and I don't like to get involved in your personal lives, you and your sister. He paused. Unless your sister gets in trouble. He added. Which is a lot. I said. He pursed his lips in agreement. Anyway, I called you in here, well, I wanted to tell you some things about me, my past. I nodded. Okay. Before I met your mom, well, I got around. His forehead furrowed. And it caused problems in our relationship. I thought the biggest problem was that you. I interrupted. Dad gave me a look. I returned it. That didn't help. He conceded. But you, Garrett, are not an AE. I am beyond proud of the man you've become. My face flushed with the compliment. My point is, I'm hoping that you have a better reputation than I had. With girls, I mean. Now my forehead furrowed. What are you saying? Dad's cheeks reddened slightly. To put it bluntly, I'm asking if you've had sex with different girls. I almost laughed just at the look on his face. No, Dad. I haven't done that with anyone actually. Not that I was spotless on the subject, but he didn't need to know the other things I'd done. Still, he raised an eyebrow at me. When he did that, the resemblance between him and Vi was uncanny. Nobody? He asked. Nope. All right. He laid his hands down. Good. That's good. Was that really all you wanted to talk to me about? Yes. He sighed. The last thing the pack needs is a jealous ex-lover causing trouble for you when you meet your mate, whoever she is. This time I did laugh. I don't think the entire pack would be very affected if there was one. He didn't laugh with me. In fact, his face grew serious. Do not underestimate the power of a woman who feels betrayed, son. As the saying goes, hath no fury like a woman scorned. My smile fell from my lips. In that second, the look in his eyes, I was positive there was something he wasn't telling me. The next second though, he was smiling. I'm glad you didn't take after me in this respect though. I'm also very happy that your mother agreed to have this talk with Violet. It was bad enough she was away when Violet got her first period. He shuddered visibly. I knew he was trying to change the subject, so I went with it. I'd keep my questions aside for now. Yeah, that was pretty rough. For you. He cringed at the memory. You can go now. I'm sure you have homework. Yeah. Grabbing my bag, I stood. Oh, by the way, I made captain. Did you? That's great, Garrett. Give me a copy of the schedule so I don't miss any games. I will. See you at dinner. He nodded, already focused on his laptop and reaching for his phone. I looked at him a second more, realizing I was looking into my own future, before I left the room. I walked to my room, remembering the times I'd sit in that office with him, begging him to give me something to do. Being alpha wasn't just what I was born to do, it was what I always wanted to do. I couldn't imagine anything better than having the opportunity to help my pack, to give back to them. Mom worked as a doctor in the pack hospital, and I think she was always a little aggrieved that neither Violet nor I wanted to go down that path as a career. Not that medicine didn't fascinate me. I read her medical books until I had them mostly memorized. But that was just another part of alpha training for me. I wanted to know as much as possible, anything that would help me become a better leader. Dad was amazing, the best role model. But I had ideas and visions for Blood Moon. I wanted to take us further than ever. Hopefully, I would make him proud. Shutting my door, I flopped onto my bed, pulling out my homework. I flew through the English and math, my most boring subjects. History and science were a bit trickier for me, but I liked the challenge, and still managed to pull off a low A grade. I was halfway done when my door opened and Violet appeared. Hey! Hey! Her tone was tired. What's up? I asked as I turned back to my work. You're home early. I thought you'd be home after dinner. Had to come home. She face planted onto my beanbag chair. I couldn't be around them anymore. She groaned into the soft material. Brienne and Dylan. I finished the last question in my history homework as I talked. Were you starting to get jealous? I smirked at her. She turned her head and shot me a dirty look. No. They're just so. Her face scrunched up. Lovey. Lovey. I chuckled. You know, like mushy and stuff. She flopped onto her back, staring at the ceiling. I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled out my science homework. Just think, sis. In a week and a bit, you'll be the exact same way with your mate. Ew. Come on. I've seen you reading all those romance novels. You have a soft side. That stuff doesn't happen in real life, Garrett. Not according to Mom and Dad. Remember what Dad did for their anniversary? Violet grinned. Yeah. The fancy candle-light dinner under the stars and moon. Mom loved it. See? Chivalry isn't dead. Maybe not. I guess it depends who your mate is. My pencil stopped, hovering over the page. I bit the inside of my cheek, wondering if I should tell her or not. I had planned to. But again, was it worth it right now? What if her mate turned out to be Brian, from the basketball team? Or Eric, maybe he wasn't even in Blood Moon. What's wrong? I looked at my sister, who was watching me with curious eyes. She'd blow a gasket if I told her right now. Making up my mind, I determined not to say anything. Found now? Nothing. Just thinking about this problem. I pointed to the page. Oh. She picked up the controller to my game station. After you're done, want to play? I have a feeling Brienne isn't coming over for a while. Sure. Dylan was supposed to come over, but obviously he's busy. She made a face again while set up the game. She played a couple rounds by herself while I finished up, and then I joined her on the floor. We played until Mom came to get us for dinner, and I thought my situation through as we ate. I wouldn't say anything to Violet, not now. You okay? You were really quiet at dinner. Violet asked me as we walked to our rooms. Yeah. Just thinking about the future. Like alpha stuff. Yeah. She nodded. Congrats on making captain, by the way. Thanks. Night. Yup. I carried on to my room. Not bothering to undress, I lay down in bed, staring at the wall. No, I wouldn't say anything. But if it so happened, if the world was cruel enough to give her Jasper as a mate, I would. That little voice piped up again, but I squashed it and went to sleep. Violet's POV. I was, admittedly, extremely anxious. I couldn't quite recall a moment in my life when I was this nervous. Wondering why? My birthday is tomorrow. Tomorrow. Which meant I will find my mate. Maybe. Hopefully. Possibly. What if he's a monster? I mumbled to myself as I walked through the woods. I'd been taking these walks more often recently, having become restless the last week or so. I had barely eaten anything in the last 3 days, my appetite leveling off at 0. I knew this was normal. Some people ate like they were eating for 10, and others were like me. Mom even ordered my favorite pizza last night, but I couldn't touch it. So I went for a walk instead. Now here I was again, wandering aimlessly around the forest, talking to myself. I hope he's at least attentive. I sighed. It would suck donkey balls if I had a mate who never listened to me. That only made me think about my newly mated friends. Dylan and Brienne had been inseparable, going everywhere together, and pining vocally for each other when they couldn't be together, like in class. Me? I was the one who had to listen to it. As my birthday grew closer, I was getting more short-tempered. Wednesday, I'd snapped at Brienne in English, immediately feeling awful. She assured me it was okay, she understood. But still. Garrett wasn't much better than I was at the moment. The only difference is that he did have an appetite. Yet, he was as hot-tempered as I was lately, which was unusual to see. I looked up at the sky, amazed that it was already darkening. I hadn't realized I'd been out here that long. I'd left around 2. Then I realized where I was. The clearing where Mom had her first shift. A smile spread across my face as I looked around. Mom had brought me here years ago, and then a few times since, reliving the memory of her first shift, and how she thought she could avoid Dad because he'd upset her. And then how he'd found her, that she'd run away. A laugh escaped me as I recalled the next part, Dad's face when he saw Mom's wolf for the first time, and her telling him off afterwards. Boy, I wish I'd been alive then to see that. What's funny? I started at the voice behind me. Whirling around, I immediately took a fighting stance, my eyes narrowing as they landed on Jasper. He threw his hands up in surrender, taking a step back. Easy, tiger. I'm not here to fight you. Slowly, I straightened up. What are you doing out here? I asked him sharply. I was out for a walk, and I saw you. Thought I'd come say hi. He shrugged. You seem to be running into me a lot lately. I crossed my arms. What's up with that? Maybe I'm just lucky. He shot me a grin, and my stomach did a little flip. I pushed the feeling aside. Yeah, I don't think that's it. You missed my birthday. I rolled my eyes. He'd asked me at least 20 times to go to his stupid birthday party. My answer was no every time. Instead, I'd stayed in and watched old horror movies and ate more junk food than I cared to admit. Still a better way to spend the night though. Happy birthday! I told him nonchalantly. He took a few steps, placing himself in front of me. Don't I get a birthday kiss? Nope. Ouch. I rolled my eyes again, turning away from him. Are you excited for tomorrow? He asked. What's tomorrow? I played dumb. He gave me a look. Your birthday? Oh yeah. How'd I forget that? He chuckled lowly beside me. Think you'll find your mate? I don't know. I replied honestly. Jasper looked up into the sky. I took the chance to peek at him. The sky was clear, casting the last rays of light through the woods. Long shadows fell over the ground, ours and the trees and bushes. An orange hue played around him from the setting sun, lighting up his features. His hair shone, taking on an auburn color, and his eyes reflected the light of the sky. In this light, he seemed even more muscular, his white t-shirt clinging to him. My mouth went completely dry as my eyes landed on his jeans, and the outline I saw there. Well, it's rude to stare at people. My eyes met his as I felt blood rush to my face. He smirked at me. I wasn't staring at you. I lied. Sure. I turned my face away, hoping my hair covered my blazing cheeks. Jasper sank to the ground, patting the spot next to him. Seriously? I asked. What makes you think I want to hang out with you? I wouldn't call this hanging out. He looked around. I was out for a walk, you were out for a walk, and we both needed a break. I almost smiled at his stupidity. Almost. Fine. I slumped to the ground next to him, keeping some distance between us. He chuckled lowly. We sat in silence for a while. I stared at a tree with an odd shape in its trunk, listening to the sounds of the forest around me. After a while, Jasper spoke. I'm scared. He said randomly. I turned my head to look at him, but he was looking up at the sky still. It was slowly beginning to fill with stars, some reflecting in his eyes. Why? I asked. I'm scared of my first shift. He explained. I thought about that for a minute. But males have an easier time than females. I guess. He lifted one shoulder in a half shrug. If sure you'll be fine. I paused. Honestly, I'm freaked out too. My voice wavered at the end, giving away just how freaked out I actually was. You. He gave me a look of mock bewilderment. But you're not scared of anything. Oh, shut up. I threw a twig at him. Everyone is scared of something, you know. Yet. That's true. You didn't meet your mate yet? I asked. I'm out here with you, aren't I? I shot him a wide-eyed look. He laughed. What I mean is, I'm not holed up in my room with a mate right now. Oh. I looked away, another blush on my face. Yet. What about you? Obviously not. Or I wouldn't be out here either. Fair enough. He leaned back on his hands. Are you excited to meet him? I thought through my answer. Maybe. Maybe. His tone was confused. Well, I guess it depends on who it is. I said. I know that some people don't get the best mates. And some people are mated with monsters. I sighed. I just hope whoever he is, he's good to me. I'm sure he will be. How could he not be, honestly? I met his eyes, and my breath hitched at the look in them. I'd never seen Jasper look at anyone so tenderly, so gently. Somehow, it made me feel better. Made me feel reassured. Thanks. I said quietly. We lapsed back into silence, but it was less uncomfortable now. Actually, it was surprising me more and more how comfortable I felt around Jasper. Obviously, I wasn't his biggest fan, and given my mood recently, it was downright amazing I hadn't slugged him upon seeing him. What was even more odd, was a part of me wanted to keep talking to him. So, I cleared my throat, much to his amusement. Are your parents coming tomorrow? His smile faltered, and I regretted asking. Yet. He said monotonously. You don't seem very happy about it. I pressed. He let out a breath. You don't know much about me, do you? His question took me by surprise. Not really, I admitted. He tugged his knees into his chest, resting his chin on them. Did you know I wasn't born into blood moon? My eyes widened. No. My mom was a rogue. A rogue? Did she bring you here? I asked curiously. He shook his head. I wandered into blood moon territory when I was 6. We were attacked one night and she died protecting me. Oh. My eyes shifted to the ground. I'm sorry. Don't be. I lifted my gaze to his again. I loved my mom. And she loved me. I know she would do the same thing again, if she had another chance. There was nothing I could do, and I've accepted that. I looked into his eyes, saw the pain there. Instinctively, I reached out and placed my hand on his shoulder, leaning over. I think that's a good way to look at it, I said. Yet, I do wish she could be here tomorrow night, but my adoptive family will be, so I take that as a win. How did you? I don't mean to pry, but I flopped around in my head, trying to find a way to ask my question. Jasper laughed, patting my hand that was still on his shoulder. Your mom took me in actually. He smiled. The beta found me wandering around the woods and brought me to the pack house. The same night, your mom found an amazing family who were willing to take me in. The Coles. Yup. And your dad? I asked. Was he a rogue too? His face instantly hardened. The change was so fierce, my hand fell away from his shoulder. The air grew tense, and I knew I shouldn't have asked that particular question. My dad, he spit the word, was never around. Mom never mentioned him either. I don't even know if he knows I exist. He wasn't there to help protect us, to protect her. I'm better off without him, and I don't need to know who he is. I stared at him, too stunned to reply. A sharp pang of sympathy I knew he didn't want, hit me. I couldn't imagine my life without my dad. I'm sorry, I whispered. Jasper took a deep breath. No, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have snapped like that. I just don't like to talk about him. Understandable. I won't bring it up again. Thanks. The silence was, once again, awkward. Violet's POV. I looked at my phone, checking the time. I should get going. It's almost midnight, and I know my parents are waiting up so they can be the first to wish us a happy birthday. I rolled my eyes, but I was smiling. They've been doing that ever since I could remember. Sure. See you later, Violet. I paused as I got up. Even though this was better than any other time we talked, I didn't think I'd do it again. It wasn't like we were friends now, I just didn't feel the need to be quite to him anymore. So instead of replying, I simply nodded and started walking away. I could feel his eyes on me as I headed in the direction of the pack house. I started running through the forest, jumping over logs and skirting bushes in order to make it back on time. My mind wandered as I ran. Tomorrow I would be running with 4 legs instead of 2. I wondered what I would look like. Garrett had expressed his theory that one of us were mother wolves, like Mom, but I doubted it. Something like that happened once in a blue moon, and no blue moon was scheduled anytime soon. A shiver of fear ran up my spine as I thought about my shift. Mom had described it to me many times, giving me advice on how to handle it in case I didn't have my mate there to help me. She made it sound horrifying, and it probably was. What if I did have to go through it alone? My parents promised they would be there in any case, but that didn't help me. Only a mate could take away the majority of the pain caused by the first shift. There was a lot of guys in our pack, and none had come to me claiming me as their mate. If they were 18 or older, they would know before I would. I bit my lip worriedly as I exited the tree line and slowed to a jog. What if my mate wasn't in this pack? Would he feel it when I started to shift? Would he come for me, help me? I could only hope so. I rounded the side of the pack house, my eyes finding Garrett walking up the steps. "Hey!" I said. "You were out too?" "Yeah." He swept the sweat from his brow off. "I needed to go for a run." "I know what you mean." Together, we entered the pack house, only to be greeted by our smiling parents, Uncle Ben and Uncle Luke, and their mates. Even Uncle Killian and Aunt Thera were here. "Hi guys." Mom stepped forward, ushering us in. "We hoped you'd make it back on time." "Sorry," Garrett and I said in unison. Mom waved her hand. "Don't worry, we get it. I was the same way, always restless before my shift." Together, we walked to the cafeteria. My stomach growled as I took in the plates of food that had been laid out. Sandwiches, cheese and crackers, pickle trays, muffins, fruit bowls, meat trays, and different types of bread rolls. Garrett immediately sat down and started eating, while I nibbled on a cracker. I was hungry, but my stomach protested still. Mom rubbed my shoulder as she sat beside me. "Just eat as much you can," she said. I gave her a grateful smile. The others sat down around us, chatting happily. I caught up with Aunt Thera, who I hadn't seen in a while. Being Luna didn't give her much time to come visit, even though she was so close. "Where's Val?" I asked. "We had to leave him at home. He's grounded." She shook her head. "Oh. What did he do this time?" Luke asked. Aunt Thera sighed. "We found out he was bullying at school." "So he's taking after you then?" Dad asked casually. "FKU Dimitri." Aunt Thera snapped. "Point in case." Dad smirked and she threw a muffin at him which he neatly dodged. I laughed at their antics. "Hey, sorry we're late." Aunt Hazel and Uncle Clint entered the room, followed by their son, Damien. We smiled at each other, Aunt Hazel giving me a hug while Uncle Clint walked over to Garrett. "How are you, hun?" "I'm good, Aunt Hazel." "You're not late, there's 3 minutes to go," Mom said. My stomach twisted at her words. Everyone got quiet as we waited, eyes glued to the big clock above the doors. Garrett came to my side, and I could tell he was holding his breath just like I was. When the hands struck midnight, Mom jumped up and wrapped us in a tight hug. "Happy birthday!" Everyone cheered. We were hugged by everyone there, being wished all the best and whatnot. My eyes met my brother's, and I could tell he was still just as nervous as I was. Mom left to get our gifts, but as soon as she opened the cafeteria doors, Garrett stiffened. I might have been the only one who noticed, as I was the only one looking at him still. His head whipped around faster than his body, and he nearly ran over Uncle Miguel on his way out the door. "Garrett!" Aunt Thera called, but he was already gone. I moved with everyone else, jogging after him as he ran down the hall and threw open the doors that led to the kitchen. His entire body went statue still, and I heard his breath stop. We stopped behind him, crowding the doorway. Stepping around Uncle Ben, I looked into the room. My heart dropped into my stomach. Standing by the sink was a pretty blonde, humming to herself. She was cutting up an apple, not paying any mind to the group of us staring at her. Then her face lifted, tilting to the side. Glancing behind her, her eyes went wide and she dropped the knife she was holding. She turned around, facing us, and slowly removed a pair of headphones from her ears. Her eyes landed on each of our faces before finally settling on Garrett's. Both of their faces went white as sheets. "Gee, Garrett!" "Sophia!" Anger coursed through me, hot and fiery. How cruel was this? This had broken my brother's heart, and then it turns out she's his mate. The goddess had a sick sense of humor. You're my mate," Sophia said. I heard Mom gasp quietly beside me. A small smile played on Sophia's face, but Garrett was shaking his head back and forth slowly. "Why?" he asked. Sophia's brows furrowed in confusion. "Why?" he shouted, startling everyone but me. "Garrett!" She took a step towards him and he responded by taking a step back. "Garrett, what is the matter with you?" Mom asked. "What is going on?" Uncle Luke asked. Before things got out of hand, I stepped into the room and faced everyone. "I think Garrett and his mate need some time alone," I said. Mom and Dad looked from me, to him, to Sophia. Everyone else just looks confused. I met my brother's eyes, asking the silent question. He nodded. "Stay," he said to me. "Garrett, I cut my dad off. 10 minutes, guys. Please." Everyone looked at us before shuffling out the door. And no eavesdropping. I called after them. When the door shut, I pressed my ear against it, listening to their retreating footsteps. Satisfied, I turned to Sophia. She was staring at Garrett with tears in her eyes. Her bottom lip quivered, and I rolled my eyes heavily. "Are you?" she sniffed. "Are you going to reject me?" she asked him. I looked at him. He seemed to be struggling. "I don't know," he finally managed. Sophia's face crumbled at his words. "Please don't," she begged. "Please." "Why shouldn't he?" I snapped. "You have no idea how much pain you caused him." She lowered her head. "I'm sorry. I know that's stupid to say, now, but I am. I never wanted to hurt you." "Then why did you?" he yelled. I don't know." A single tear left her eye, falling carelessly down her cheek. "That's a BT answer," I said. She looked up at me. "You hurt him because you didn't care about him." "That's not true." "Really? Then how did you end up in bed with another guy?" She looked from me to Garrett. "You told her?" he scoffed. "Of course I told her. She's my sister, my twin. I didn't have anyone else to go to. I was destroyed by what you did." He leaned against one of the metal counters, covering his face with his hands. "Why should I accept you as my mate when you've already betrayed me once, in the worst way?" She didn't answer right away, crossing her arms over her chest. Finally, she looked at him again. "You shouldn't." I raised my eyebrows, surprised by her answer. But she wasn't finced. "What I did was horrible, and there is no excuse for it." She took a deep, shuddering breath. "All I can do is promise not to do anything so horrible again. And ask for a second chance. I loved you, Garrett. I still do, and I never stopped. I don't think I ever will. But if you can't accept me as your mate, I understand. If that's the case, then please reject me now so we can both try to move on." I watched my brother's face go from anger, to sadness, back to anger, to hope, confusion, and finally uncertainty. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He tried again, and again. After a few tense minutes, he simply shook his head and stormed out of the room. I turned back to Sophia, who was crying silently. "What do I do?" she asked me. I gave her a hard look. "I don't know what he's thinking," I told her. "But I'm here to tell you that if he does reject you, you better keep your word and move on." She nodded sadly. "And if by some miracle he actually accepts you, you better not hurt him again. Because if you do, not only will you be a disgrace to the word mate, but you will also be a disgrace to my family, and future Luna of this pack. And I'll make sure everyone knows it," I promised. She met my eyes, understanding that I wasn't joking. Slowly, she nodded again. I turned to leave. Sophia called out to me as my hand touched the door. "What? How much did he tell you?" she asked. I looked at her over my shoulder. "Enough. Enough that you not only have to earn his trust again, but mine as well." The rest of the audiobooks will be uploaded in the next episode. Join us on Patreon to listen to more unlimited audiobooks.